Hello, welcome to another week of StandUnited Facebook Live. We're switching it up a little bit differently. We're going to do an interview. But before we get to that, let's do our usual On This Day fun facts. So, on this day of August 2nd in 1776 was the official formal signing of the Declaration of Independence by 56 people. And this is the most accepted date by most historians. As you know, July 4th is officially our birthday. That's when a couple of people signed, and then everybody else signed it on this day. In 1923, Vice President Calvin Coolidge became the U.S. president after the death of Warren G. Harding. And then a little fun pop culture. In 1999, The Sixth Sense premiered. Long time ago. Well, yep, like 18 years ago.
It's crazy.
Makes me feel really old. All right, and for today, we have James Miller, content marketer with the Political Insider, with us today, and we're just going to discuss some of the trending news. There's been a lot going on this week for us to talk about.
It hasn't been a boring week, that's for sure.
For sure. So why don't we start off with Monday, because although it was only 2 days ago, it feels like so much happened.
Yes.
Scaramucci resigned after a whopping 10 days as communications director, the shortest communications director in history. What's your take?
So, yes, Anthony Scaramucci, brought into the White House about 12 days ago, fired Monday. His tenure lasted about 10 days. It was a wild ride. So, rumors are, in Washington, he was brought in at the behest of some folks in the Trump White House for the sole purpose of getting rid of Chief of Staff Reince Priebus and also getting rid of Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Well, mission accomplished. Last Friday, we learned that Reince Priebus, he resigned, and then a few days before that, Sean Spicer also resigned. And then with that, Scaramucci's on his way out. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One was him talking to the press, him using some very lewd language.
Right.
So there's some people in the White House who are not very pleased with it. And basically the rumblings around are that the new Chief of Staff, John Kelly, very tough general guy, he pushed for Scaramucci to get out. He didn't want some guy like that. I mean, Scaramucci, much like Trump, is a wild card. You don't know. He had no idea what he was ever going to say on TV. He had some pretty explosive interviews during a short time as communications director. So he was seen as kind of a liability, and he was pushed out.
That's actually quite impressive in 10 days to have so much controversy.
Yes.
That they're done with you. Can you tell us how this works for the Trump White House and how, this works for, people's view of the Trump cabinet and everything?
Sure. So, like I said, John Kelly comes in as the new chief of staff. He's tightening the ship. With Reince Priebus gone, things are going to get a lot tighter, a lot more formal, a lot more professional in the White House. Before, Priebus was kind of a pushover. He was seen as more of a wallflower. In meetings, there were reports that Priebus kind of just sat there, didn't really weigh in on things. And the meetings would be very meandering, so they go on for a long time. Trump would go on tangents, people would go on different tangents. So that's already starting to change. Kelly's already starting to establish order, making sure meetings happen on time, stay on topic. And yeah, apparently all the people in the White House are showing a lot of deference towards him, and they're basically putting him in the position of being a person with a lot of authority and will be the access point to the president.
That sounds like much needed structure.
Yes.
So moving on, then we have Tuesday.
Yes.
Yesterday, you guys broke a story about an upcoming Supreme Court nomination, another one. What is going on with all of that for people who haven't been following? So
yes, over the past few months, there's been a lot of speculation that there's going to be another court vacancy. You've seen people like Senator Ted Cruz mention it, Senator Chuck Grassley mention it. Roger Stone, the very highly connected Trump ally, talked about it over the weekend at a political conference, and he basically said that any day now, Anthony Kennedy, the Reagan-appointed Supreme Court justice, will announce his retirement. Now, a month ago, this was supposed to happen when the Supreme Court concluded its term. It ended up not happening, but Kennedy could announce at any time, and all around Washington, the question is when. What day will it be? It could be next week, it could be next month, it could be 6 months from now. I think we're fairly positive that by the end of Trump's first term, Kennedy will step down from the court. It's just a question of when.
And Kennedy, correct me if I'm wrong, is always kind of the swing vote that goes either way. So this is
Right.
a real opportunity.
Yeah, so for decades, Kennedy has always been seen as kind of the arbiter or basically the deciding factor. So there's 4 conservatives on the bench, 4 liberals. Kennedy goes back and forth. He can be very socially liberal. He can be very fiscally conservative. It just depends. So if he goes, Trump will have an opportunity to put somebody who's a little more reliable in place.
Hopefully another Gorsuch.
Hopefully.
He's been great so far.
Yes.
And then finally, it's August, which
Yes.
means the Hill is emptying out as all of the senators and congressmen go back to their home states for the month. Going off of that, since it's going to be a slower news for legislative session, what are some of the key topics people should be following this next month as everyone is kind of on a break?
Sure, there are a few things. So the Senate is not leaving town just yet. Before the Obamacare repeal failure, the Senate was going to stay around for a few weeks. But now that they don't have Obamacare to work with anymore, they're going to be pushing through a bunch of Trump nominees that have yet to be confirmed. So that'll be happening over the next week or so. And you just saw one yesterday with the confirmation of the new FBI director, Christopher Wray. So that'll be happening. But once that happens, Congress will be gone. And there's a few things to look out for. One is, since Obamacare is kind of finished at this point, they're going to be moving on to tax reform, which will be a much heavier lift than Obamacare because there's a lot more vested interests in keeping the tax code how it is than there were in keeping Obamacare. So that's going to be a big thing. There's rumors that Trump will start going around different states holding the same kind of rallies he did during the campaign and trying to boost up just public approval and public demand of tax reform. And then the bigger thing is that come September there will be a spending package that needs to be voted on to fund the government. And also I believe the debt ceiling will need to be raised. And those two things will kind of combine and it's going to create this big battle mid-September. So once Congress comes back, there's going to be a very limited time to do any work on those issues, and it's going to be pretty hectic.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us today, James. It was a pleasure, and I'm sure our audience loved getting some of your inside take on this.
Yes.
My colleague Angela will be back with you guys next week to talk about our trending petitions. And have a good weekend. See ya.